Thank you, Gus, for that excellent presentation and hopefully giving us reasons to be optimistic in the public sector tech market, even for us in the local government world as well. Thank you. So I'm delighted to be chairing this next session powered by Capita, so transforming to a citizen-centric model with intelligent automation. If I could please invite to the stage Piers Campbell, James Ewing and Robin Denton to join me on the chairs here. Well, welcome all. I think this morning we heard, no mention of AI or intelligent automation, but we are here, we have arrived. And I think it's great to have this session because it's in the news a lot. It's something that we are talking about a lot. So hopefully within this session, we can demystify what that means, but also help organisations, public sector and government really maximise the full benefit of this technology to realise, as you say, those citizen-centric outcomes, helping them to be more agile, efficient organisations, but at the heart of it, improving the lives of citizens and our places. Before we begin with the discussion, it'd be good to know a bit more about your role within this world of AI and intelligent automation. If I can start with you, James, and then we finish with Robin, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm James Ewing. I work with ISG, and I'm here working alongside Capita with some of the central government clients they have. I run the intelligent automation and advanced technologies business within ISG. I've been in automation for probably about 7 years, so in dog years, that's mean I've been about 20 years experience in automation. And I've done a lot of work across public sector, commercial sector, finance, and a lot of work in healthcare where there's huge opportunities for automation.
Fantastic.
Afternoon, everybody. My name is Piers Campbell. I wear two hats at Capita. So I lead our data and AI work currently, and I'm also leading our digital transformation internally. So that may drop a hint about where we think the market's going and the things that we're interested in. I was a data scientist for a number of years in academia before coming to the dark side of consulting. So it's amazing to see where AI and data science has really started to accelerate over the last sort of 5 or 6 years in particular.
Fantastic.
Robin Denton, I'm the head of local government at Microsoft in the UK. Quite a lengthy background working for Microsoft in that sector. I've done 18 years of it. Needless to say, we've seen a lot of different programs and projects that have kind of gone through the cycle of getting more data-led, getting more automation into place, and now we're seeing obviously what people are looking at doing around AI to infuse that further.
Fantastic. So hopefully we'll get a good view from both that national, local and industry perspective as well. So James, if I can start with you in terms of the kind of the barriers, and hopefully we'll end on kind of the optimism, the opportunities. What are the barriers and also the opportunities for government to be able to, automate and use AI to improve that citizen experience?
Okay, so let's start with the opportunity, right? Because that is by far the biggest place. There's I still see in the whole market, not just public sector, private sector, there are organisations that haven't started with automation yet, not even done the assessments. We're still doing assessments for people to understand what the automation opportunity is. And you look to people who have broken that scale barrier, and that's one of the major challenges within the automation space, is breaking that scale barrier. Organisations now have thousands of digital workers performing tasks across the whole enterprise, the whole business, both customer-facing and back office. Automation started in the back office, and it's rapidly extended through to the front office, customer services, citizen services now. And it's that infusion of additional AI capabilities to automation that's opening up even more opportunities to deliver frictionless services to citizens and improve employee experience. So when you look at the two first main barriers we see, and I've coined the phrases for them, you get the never-ending POC, right? A smaller part of the organisation looks at automation, plays around with the tooling, maybe gets an expert in for a couple of weeks, they build a process, and it stops there. So that never-ending POC, never getting beyond the first bot or the first couple of bots and the first couple of processes. Then we see departmental scaling. So finance, HR, or operations decide to deploy a number of processes in their part of the business, and it gets to say 10 or 15 processes within an organisation, and then it stops. And again, partly because the subject matter experts understand their processes in their space, say finance, but they don't really understand the HR processes. So they struggle to get beyond that second barrier. And the other problem with the departmental scaling is you're not actually improving the efficiency or making things better. All you're doing is moving the bottleneck. So finance used to process 1,000 orders a month. Now they do 2,000 order months, but operations are now completely slammed. So we need to think about the life cycle of an automation, of an end-to-end process to help break that scale barrier. So when we look at the infusion of automation and AI, what you're really bringing together is a digital workforce, or a digital worker. Right? And then when you start to understand how a digital worker can either be working for the citizens, and we look at this, make that frictionless engagement with central and local government using AI, and equally how we can then apply those digital workers alongside the human workforce to improve that employee experience. And I mean, if we look at, there's research around healthcare, nurses spend 25% of their time typing. So if we can free them up to do more purposeful work, that's where a digital worker can help. And again, understanding the infusion of AI into a digital worker, it's having the ability to read and understand documents, process documents, read and understand unstructured text like emails and action things from them, using things like OCR to process documents, using more algorithmic tooling to help make more decisions. And again, then you start to bring in the things that we're seeing around conversational AI, being able to speak to government, to process stuff. And the last area where I think there's huge opportunities for central and local government is that legacy application modernisation. That journey to modernise an application could be 3 or 5 years. Using automation, and not complex IA, fairly basic IA, you can modernise those applications, bring it into that. And I always say, when we talk about digital transformation at ISG, there has to be an automation thread through it. If there's not an automation thread running through your digital transformation program, it's not a digital transformation program. So that opportunity to bring those new services in are huge, but the barriers are there. So you need to, we need executive support from the top. We need subject matter experts that understand automation. I work with a lot of large suppliers that treat automation as a commodity service. It is not. It is an expert service. And the other thing to remember about automation is it sits on a moving landscape of IT. So that long-term understanding of how to support and manage the digital workforce is really, really important. And for some reason, it's something that a lot of organisations have forgotten about. I worked with an NHS trust that had spent nearly £800,000 on their automation journey. They had one automation and it had been broken for 9 months and no one knew how to fix it. So there are some horror stories in terms of deployment, and a lot of the work that we do and some of the work we're doing with Capita is how we modernise automation programs, how we make them successful, how we break those 2 scale barriers that then allow you to get. And again, when we think about the value cases within public sector, they're different to the ones we see in the commercial sector. The commercial sector is very much about cost reduction, but then when we look at public sector services, it's about the employee experience, taking tasks away from people that they never wanted to do in the first place, allowing that frictionless integration or frictionless services, and having co-pilots that work alongside the employees to help them do more stuff, more customer-centric, citizen-centric work. So again, the value case is different. We can also look at reduced cycle times. Things that used to take weeks to do may only take hours to do. Probably the most stunning case I had was a process that took 4 weeks to do manually. We got it down to 2 hours. So those are the sort of benefits we can see in using automation in public sector. So again, it's thinking about the value cases slightly differently. It's the error rates are reduced, the compliance rates are increased, risk is reduced, all these kind of things all come in as part of a well thought out automation program within an organisation.
Oh, thank you, James. Definitely huge potential there. But I think what our earlier speakers mentioned, it comes back to that people and creating that culture of innovation, that environment for that technology to thrive. Robin, if I can come to you, what advancements are you seeing in terms of technology that is helping to revolutionise the citizen experience at Microsoft?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting market at the moment because it's moving at such a pace. There is so much change coming in the way people can deliver services. And I think what's really important when we're talking about it is that citizen-centric angle. What is it you are trying to drive as an outcome? And I hear a lot of conflicting language when I speak to the sectors about this. Taxpayer, patient, resident, customer. Hi, I'm Robin. I'm all of those things. And everyone who is engaging with the system is all of those things. So how as we start understanding the context in which someone is trying to engage with a part of the public sector and how we can make that more efficient for that individual to drive a benefit to them. That's what we're all looking for, is a benefit. So if I look at some of the things going on in the local government sector as an example, there's a lot of work at the moment around some of the most vulnerable members of society. So what can we do to put tech-enabled care into a home? Have sensors in home and start being able to detect things that we need to react to really quickly. Someone's had a fall. We have someone with dementia who maybe has opened a door and has gone walking out, and we now need to go and find them. How is it we actually put those interjections in place for the truly vulnerable, and what does that look like? You then move up a layer and you go, okay, we maybe not dealing with the most vulnerable, but we're dealing with the next section, which is where are people who are maybe struggling to pay bills, maybe struggling with their benefits. They have different scenarios that we need to engage them with. How can we build that view of that individual and proactively reach out to them, not reactively wait for them to phone saying, I can't pay my heating bill. So how can we start pulling those different data threads together to engage with them in that way? And you kind of keep going up that journey all the way to where you get to the citizens, like probably most of us in this room, who have limited liability directly on that local authority, above and beyond, have my bins been picked up and have I hit a pothole? But even in those contexts, how do we make sure that actually when someone's trying to contact us about something that's seriously problematic for them, we're getting a timely response with an outcome for them? And all of that is based fundamentally on data and workflows. Not a lot there has changed. What is changing is the way that you can now stitch those things together to get a central view and to quickly trigger processes and get things completed. Now, we talk about automated intelligence, AI over the top of that. I mean, fundamentally, that is putting steroids behind it using natural language at the moment is what we're seeing. So contact center deflection, being able to tap into those different data sets and make a recommendation, being able, when someone has a call with you, to be able to transcribe that, put that into a log somewhere for future use, but actually summarize it really quickly into case notes that can then be looked at by the next person who might be going to see Doris, who has got multiple different interaction points because she falls into various different pieces of that. So for me, it's thinking about what is that outcome you're looking to drive? What is that automation that can improve that process? And how do you go through that cycle with that outcome very firmly in mind?
Absolutely, some really important points, especially how we can use that data to build that trust, both internally, but within, as you say, within our kind of people and places. So maybe something we can come to in the discussion. Piers, it would be great to hear a bit more about how Capita have been leveraging automation and AI to help the public sector make significant headway when it comes to what we're saying, actually improving the citizen experience.
Yeah, I mean, Capita's got a really rich history of working with partners like Microsoft and ISG to automate processes, and I think that we've 175 organisations and we touch 35 million people. So I mean, we've lots of experience in that space, but the exhilaration is the bit that's probably focusing our minds at the moment in terms of the opportunity that's out there, the demand that's out there, the need from the public sector, which is really exhilarating to be able to do more with less, essentially, and how automation plays into that, and to James's point, to try to then understand how that business case stacks up in the future and where do they start on that journey, because we still have lots of conversations with customers around how do I automate this piece of my process, or how do I automate this process. Where we need to be getting to is the conversation about how do we automate that service. How does that become an end-to-end service? How do we get that orchestration layer that needs to be in there? And how do we then start moving towards the automation and the cognitive services that Robin touched on as well? So for us, it's that journey. It's helping our customers understand where they start on that journey, how they make the business case, as I say, stack up, but how do they, get the POC off the ground, but make sure that they actually deliver something. And that's about picking the right POC, right? And it's about making sure that you've got something which is strong enough to be able to make the case compelling, but also not so difficult that you're going to get bogged down in it, and it's going to be something that doesn't demonstrate the fruition of what automation can bring through. So for us, that's very much a collaborative exercise and is continuing to grow as a collaborative exercise in terms of working and co-creating with our customers to be able to go on that journey with them, rather than perhaps what we and other organisations have done in the past, which is tell us what your problem is, we'll go away and come back with a solution which hopefully fits your needs. But it needs to be that collaborative, hand-in-hand development process that leads them, and goes over the ramps that they experience along the way together, so that you get the outcomes that they want to drive, and also the learnings that we can bring from other customers, whether that's public sector or commercial sector as well.
Fantastic, and great to hear about that collaboration, both with your partners, but also kind of your industry partners. So it kind of shows nicely to kind of Gus's presentation earlier. So it's great to see this collaboration in action, because it does take a whole ecosystem. So I've got lots of questions, but I'd like to open it up to the floor as well first. So if anyone has any comments or questions. While you, oh no, there is a, I won't use my chair's prerogative.
Hi. Yeah, I was just interested in your views with regard to fraud. It was touched on this morning, and we know I think there's about 28 billion of fraud across the public sector. I think DWP struggle with 8.6 billion of fraud and error too. What do you think the answer is? Is it AI? And if it's AI, how do you fix that?
Well, so there's a couple of things where automation and AI can help, right? So automation can be used in the fraud process. It's been used in the fraud process within banking for many years. A couple of things, digital workers don't mistake a 6 for a 9, so the data is always accurate. It won't not do something. It won't not check something. So in that regard, just raw automation can help out in that fraud process. I worked with a health insurer where we built a very complex algorithmic model, which was actually based on dynamic data, because fraud doesn't stay still; it moves. So if you used to get defrauded by fax, no one gets defrauded by fax anymore. It's moved on. So as that data moves, as the methods of fraud change, the process for dealing with fraud is pretty standard, right? So that's a very automatable process in how we research and deal with fraud, and we can start to bring more AI in. Now, I won't jump to generative AI, because if anybody in this room says they're ready for generative AI, they're not. But there will be a space for generative AI within that fraud model. Fraud detection, fraud analysis, and fraud processing will be definitely something that will come into. I don't know if you guys have got any other comments.
I think it's about understanding the context. I mean, it's slightly different in different parts of the sector, right? If you look at local government, a lot of fraud comes through from two ways. So firstly, we start seeing benefit fraud. So people saying, hey, I'm a single occupant, you've got 2 parking permits. Like, how does that quite align? So it's understanding kind of the context of all of that and figuring out how you map different types of frauds that are coming through, and then target those for prevention. The other type we see is through supply fraud. We see rogue traders doing things like putting into actually one of your earlier examples, putting in POs, etc., and claims for repairs they've carried out on a house, for example, that haven't been carried out. That's the type of thing that I think gets more interesting in local government, because you start getting into that world of image recognition and start being able to say, you need to send us in a photo specifically that's geo-tagged where you've done it, that says you have carried out this piece of work, and then we will cross-reference that with an order we put to you. And then through that process, we can go, right, okay, yes, that is something that we're prepared to pay. Now, that is the type of process that you could start automating a lot of, and then have the final summary of that going to someone to do the final approval on. So I think there's different contexts in different parts of the industry.
So, and just the other thing about if you do automate the process, for the healthcare organisation I was working with, they were only sampling data. So they didn't, they were aware of fraud, but they couldn't really put their hands on the size of it. Once we'd automated that fraud or the fraud monitoring, they were able to monitor 100% of their claims. So, having that automated allows you to drive up the more, the amount of information you can triage to detect fraud. So.
I think that's the interesting additional piece, that when you start to look at the data, you know the fraud that that you've always seen, but when you start to look at the data, you start to uncover different types and variations and flavours of it that you weren't aware of, and that starts to inform and give that that response or responsiveness that you're looking for to detect an action, as you discover new things. And then, as Robin said, the human in the loop element of that still is important. There's so much that you can automate, but it's how do you, who takes that final decision? How do you communicate that out to a citizen or to an individual? That's the key piece as well of what the process looks like.
I think there was a question from the gentleman there.
Yeah, I just wonder if you could clear something up for me, because I think I've heard a couple of things. One is, one of the use cases you are saying is looking at modernizing legacy code bases, and then you're saying nobody's ready for generative AI. And I'd like to understand, how do you modernize legacy code written in COBOL or even older into something new without generative AI?
Yeah. I'm an ex-mainframe guy, so I'll put my hand up for that one. So when we talk about modernising applications, I mean, if you look at doing that digital transformation to, say, a modern application architecture, the legacy systems, they still work, they still have value. But again, if you look at a digital worker interfacing with that legacy application, they'll work with that. The only limiting factor is the latency of the application. The digital worker will work a lot faster, and it can put that information into more modern systems. So either use it as a way of transferring data out into more modern looking applications. So you can populate, a GUI with an automated, with a digital worker working in the background. And equally, if you look at some of the stuff that I've done, for example, in the utility sector, where an agent has several legacy systems to use to make a change. So if there's a thing called a disputed meter read, which basically means that the agent has to log on to a metering system, a billing system, a CRM system, but working alongside a digital worker, the digital worker goes and does that work and comes back and says it's completed the work. So using digital workers to interface with multiple legacy systems that maybe in 3 years will be in a single application, you can do that now, and you can do it in weeks and months, not years. And when it comes to generative AI, the challenge there, and the biggest thing that we see with the work we're doing, is around the governance piece of it. How is our business exposed for using generative AI? What are those risks to our business? So, and that's what we've looked at it. We've got some engagements around it. We did an automation. We've just done a recent automation assessment for a client that hasn't started an automation journey. They're using pockets of people are using generative AI in the business with no policy. So it's a risk to a business to not have those governance and policies in place prior to unleashing generative AI into their organisations. Hopefully that answers both questions.
It kind of does, because I'm already taking old code and using generative AI and rewriting it in Java.
Yeah. So code modernisation, you can automate that to a degree. Yeah.
So in that instance, generative AI is ready. There's one person in the room who's using it.
But I think there's a piece there about the composability of services going forward. So absolutely, in your use case, generative AI is there and can be used, and you're proving that. I think that if we think about how we change from those monolithic services and move towards not even microservices, but that composable structure where we say, well, we want to have the ability to slot in whatever comes next in 3 or 5 years' time. That for public sector is hugely important, right? Because you're not building the next monolithic thing that needs replaced in 5 years' time, but you need to recognise, as James said, the risks and the threat and the unknowns. I think about generative AI. We're doing a lot of work at the moment around how it can be used to produce outbound communications to citizens. And as one of the speakers said this morning, 80% isn't good enough. It has to be 100% right. So you need to understand where the edges of those use cases are and introduce that technology into your service when it's ready and appropriate and understood and the policies are in place. But that shouldn't prevent you from building those services now and upgrading them in the future. So I think there's a roadmap to bring.
I mean, there's two schools of, there's a couple of schools of thought in the whole AI world. One is about AI transparency. How did this thing come to this decision? And the example I use there is the concept of an AI judge. How did it come to that decision? What did it, so the transparency of AI is important. And then it's a really basic concept, but it's a concept of safety engineering. We didn't get a man on the moon in one go. It was done through thousands of disaster scenarios before we got there, to ensure that they could go up and come back down safely. So the same thing is true with AI. You wouldn't want to launch something onto your citizen base or customer base or supplier base without understanding exactly how it's doing what it's doing, and you've done the safety checks to make sure it's not going to do things you don't want it to.
I think just on that point, there's some great work that's been done in the industry, for the industry. So if you haven't seen it, Socketim have done an amazing job of writing a paper on how you start applying AI technologies in an ethical manner. So they're talking about what those ethical guardrails are, specific for local government, but I think it's something that you could quite quickly spread out for other parts of the public sector. And Lottie, the London Technology Institute, have also, part of Thea Blackwell's office, have also written a really good paper on how you might want to start thinking about applying AI into your organisation. And there's some really great commentary in there about key considerations that build to that point. And they're written from within the sector, looking at what is important for the sector. I think that's a really important voice to be considering.
No, that's great. I think, Robin, on that, I think before we bring to a close, I just wanted to ask you all if there's kind of one tip or advice you give to public sector embarking on this journey of automation. James, to start with you, and then Robin, you've already given one, but if you have anything else to add, you can as well.
I mean, if you haven't started, just start. That's probably my first piece of advice, because you're not, the beauty about automation is you're not breaking or changing any underlying systems. It's a level of technology that can be applied on top of everything you already have, and it will drive benefits really quickly. And there's lots of different ways now of consuming it. So, typically one of the hurdles was the cost of the infrastructure and the licensing. There's a lot of models now that are pay as you go, literally. You just pay for what you use by the minute. And the more automations you do, the more, obviously that price goes up. But, it's a very cost-effective way of getting into it. So, again, there's some simple targets to go out, and, both Capita and ourselves have target lists which are appropriate for central and local government to start with, where you'll get the most benefit. But yeah, if you're not started on that journey, you're missing out on a huge benefit to both the employees and the citizens.
I think it's the use case for me. I think it's absolutely picking the right use case. If you get that right, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And absolutely, you will be held up as a as that person that brought automation into your organisation. But if you get it wrong, the doors close really, really quickly to you. So it's about making sure you get the right balance of use case and then taking it forward.
I think final one for me. I mean, it's a journey. We touched on it earlier when we spoke about what do skills look like? What does culture look like? How are you engaging people who are delivering those services? We call them change agents in some of the work that we're doing at the moment. But how is it you go about understanding how the stuff can be applied in a relevant way that is going to help to improve the way someone either is working within the business and is going to improve how they can operate in a way that will be culturally absorbed, or you're driving a really meaningful outcome to the end citizen? That's where I would start when you start thinking about AI. Start just throwing it out there. You're going to end up with more horror stories and failed projects. Those are the bits that we've got to get right first. What is the culture, the ability to absorb it? Have we got the right skill sets to be able to engage with it? How do we do more efficient things using the technology?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, James, Piers, Robin, for your excellent insights. If anyone has any queries or if you want to continue the conversation, please do visit Capita. They have a stand, and I believe you all three will be on that stand. So feel free to continue the conversation, and you'll be happy to know it is now lunch. So do continue those conversations over lunch, whether it's about generative AI or whatever topic of your choice. Please do, network, have those conversations, and we'll be back here at 1:50 for our afternoon keynote. Tom Reed at GDS. But yeah, please do visit all our exhibitors at lunchtime as well. So thank you all, and see you back here in an hour. Thank you. Thank you, guys.